So what he did is he did the forgiveness thing and he forgave the bullies. What forgiveness does is it means it resets your nervous system so you're no longer responsive to the behavior pattern. And when you do that, this is deep, authentic forgiveness measured by neuroscience. You can actually measure it in your heart, and I measure it in your brainwaves and teach you how to do it more deeply. It feels like doing something like EMDR, like a really deep trauma release.
Dave, welcome to the podcast. I've really been looking forward to meeting you, and today's going to be fun.
Chris, I'm always excited to share the stuff that I do. Yeah. So thank you for the invitation, genuinely. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. I just care a lot. So the chance to share makes me happy too.
I know you do, and that's what makes me excited about this. In fact, I want to start here because I've heard it said that you have a personal mission to upgrade humanity. So talk about caring a lot. That's the epitome of that. Where'd that passion come from, Dave? And really, I'd love to know, how do you endeavor to upgrade humanity?
Well, I used to weigh 300 pounds. You can't tell with the camera, but I'm 8% body fat. I work out 20 minutes a week. And I have abs that I don't work for.
Wait. That's true. You're not exaggerating. You work out 20 minutes a week?
Well, I also run Upgrade Labs, which is a franchise that uses AI to get a signal into the body to get better. So my workouts are not difficult, but they're very impactful. My most recent book is like, here's all the tech that's better than picking up rocks, which is what it's either run away from tigers or pick up rocks. And now we can run away from tigers and stay in place, or we can pick up concentrated rocks in iron plates. But with AI algorithms and with all the stuff we know about our biology that we didn't even understand 20 years ago, you can get a signal in to be stronger or faster or leaner or have better endurance or to be younger. And I've been working on this for 25 years because I was diagnosed with arthritis when I was 14 in my knees. I had learning disabilities. I had Asperger's syndrome.
Oh my gosh.
I had a high risk of stroke and heart attack and prediabetes before I was 30, 15 years of antibiotics, chronic fatigue syndrome, like all the bad stuff that happens when you're like 60 or 70 happened to me in my 20s. And I realized my doctor was useless, fired him, became a biohacker, even though the name hadn't been invented, because I created that movement. But I started hanging out with people 3 times my age, actually sometimes more than 3 times. And so I learned from my elders. The grandparents of today's longevity movement ran an anti-aging nonprofit near Stanford's campus in Palo Alto. I was president and chairman of that in my 20s because like, wow, this is cool. You're the only guy under 60. Why do you care about this? I'm like, because I'm not going back to the way I used to feel. So I learned, like this group was the first group to import coconut oil in 50 years to the US because they knew about MCT oils. That's where I learned about MCTs. Was from people 3 times my age. I turned MCT oil into $1 billion industry category because I was running an anti-aging group because I didn't want to be old again because I was old in my 20s. I felt betrayed by the advice, which was work out more and eat less and you'll lose weight. And I did this religiously, Chris. I went to the gym in my early 20s, 6 days a week, 90 minutes a day. Didn't matter if it was final exams. Didn't matter if I was sick. I just went. It was more important than dating. It was more important than my job. I went on a low-fat, low-calorie diet. I'd have the spinach salad with no chicken and no dressing because calories. And at the end of all that time, I was strong enough to max out all but 2 of the machines at the gym. And I still weighed 300 pounds and had a 46-inch waist. And I concluded it's clearly a moral failing. I must be eating too much lettuce. I'm not trying hard enough. It's because I'm weak. And what I learned over time is that no, I just had really bad advice. And when you get good advice, it's not supposed to be hard. You are not supposed to be hungry all the time. In fact, I'm never hungry. It just doesn't happen unless I'm fasting for a couple days. And it's a level of energy and power that is liberating. And what I've learned over the years of biohacking, the years of running a neuroscience clinic that upgrades people's brains, of running Upgrade Labs, which is a biohacking center franchising across the country right now, of starting Bulletproof and turning it into a $100 million company, making food that you actually want to eat. What I learned is that when people are at full power, we are unprogrammable and we're nice to each other. And that's why my new coffee company is called Danger Coffee, because who knows what you might do. So you go to dangercoffee.com, and the coffee there is lab tested to be mold free, and it says it on the label. And there are other brands you might be used to that don't say mold free on the label, even though they might have at some time. But I add a bunch of trace minerals in, because what I learned is that my time as a vegan and then a raw vegan, and my time eating healthy foods like spinach and kale, even almonds, those were stripping my body of necessary minerals and adding joint pain and inflammation throughout the body. I wrote about this more than 10 years ago in the Bulletproof diet. People have lost more than 2 million pounds and counting on the Bulletproof diet. And it was the first book that mentioned intermittent fasting and cyclical keto and low inflammation proteins and plants. So when I realized you can still eat some carbs, I'm not keto, although I do use MCT oil in my Danger coffee sometimes. But like, how can I look this way? How can my lab tests say that I'm somewhere between 24 and 39 years old, even though the calendar says that I'm 50? Well, because this anti-aging stuff works. I age at a rate around 79% of the speed of normal people, and it's probably better now because I made some other changes. But that's cool, given that I started coming from behind, because I was really old when I was in my 20s. I mean, I really was not healthy. So if I can do this, most people listening will not have as hard of a time as I did. I also spent $2 million upgrading my biology, and you shouldn't have to do that. Much of that was unnecessary. And part of it's because I write books about anti-aging and hacking the human body. So I go and I test what the crazy billionaires do. And then I write about it. But the principle behind it is something that you can take advantage of. Like I write about hyperbaric oxygen in some of my books. I have a hard-sided chamber you might find at a doctor's office downstairs in my house. But can you go to the deep end of the pool and get some of the benefits? Yeah, you can, because pressure does something. It's a variable in the environment. And biohacking is just this idea. You can change the environment around you and the environment inside you so that you have full control of your own biology. So you want to be smarter? Okay. You want to be thinner? Okay. You want to be stronger? Okay. You want more endurance? You want to be able to handle stress better than everyone else so you have more capacity? You want to be faster? All of those things are possible, and you can do it the old way. You know, sit in a cave and meditate for just 6 hours a day every day, and after 20 years, you'll get there. Or hook electrodes up to your head and spend 5 really, really focused days and get the same brainwaves as someone who's spent 20 years meditating. One of my companies does that. It's called 40 Years of Zen. I spent 6 months of my life meditating like that with electrodes on my head. That's one of the reasons I can run 6 companies now and write New York Times bestsellers and all. I wasn't born with all this. I built it with biohacking. And I just want people to know that when you do this, you'll have control of your emotions. When you have control of your emotions, you are wired inside your tissues to be kind to other people. I didn't say be nice, to be kind. Those are very different things. That's what we do as a species. And there's an operating system for humans that happens before we can think. And it's the same for all life on the planet. And I figured out that operating system and a lot of the ways to hack it. And that's been at the core of the biohacking movement.
My goodness, you've given us so much already. I think I want to double click on a few things. Let's start here. So the core tenets of biohacking, like obviously you coined this word. I think Merriam-Webster actually gives you credit for it. Biohacking specifically is what? And then like, what are the core tenets of it?
So biohacking says that you can change the environment around you to make your body and your mind and your biology do what you want. And what we used to believe is that it was willpower, that it was effort, or that it just happened and you were helpless, right? You're not helpless, but willing your body to do something doesn't work very well because your body listens to the environment. It has about, if you're an average age, 30 plus, about a third of a second after something happens, your brain gets notification that it happened. So for a third of a second, your body's in charge and it decides what it's going to do. It even decides how you're going to feel. And then it gives that to you. So there's this rich reality outside of you. Your body throws away 99.9% of the reality, gives you a tiny little slice of it, and then tells you how to feel about it. And then you take credit for it. This is provable. It's a neuroscience measure called P300 or evoked potential. And I write about this in my most recent book, which is called Smarter, Not Harder. I call it the meat operating system. As in, you are made out of meat. All life on Earth follows the same basic 4 rules, and we use those in biohacking. So we can change our environment in many different ways, and I'll give you a list in a minute. But here's what happens when a signal comes into the body. Before your brain even gets an electrical wiggle, before your brain knows anything happened, well, it says, okay, is it scary? Now, the part of you that's deciding whether it's scary or not is a distributed intelligence that's in most of the cells in your body. It's based on mitochondrial intelligence. So mitochondria are not the power plants of your cells. That's something you learned in 7th grade biology. Mitochondria are little environmental sensors and computers. And based on what they decide by talking to all their other little friends and by looking at the environment, they decide whether they're going to make electricity, whether they're going to make heat, whether they're going to make sex hormones, or whether they're going to make inflammation. So they do all sorts of things. They're manufacturing plants that are independently operating. And when they operate like a swarm of birds floating around, you see that sometimes, that's inside your cells. And they do it in the tiny fraction of time before your brain even knows something happened. And if you're 18 years old, you're actually faster. For you, there's a 1/4 second delay. And for people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, it's 1/3 of a second, unless you hack your brain. I still have the brain response time of an 18-year-old. So I have the 240 millisecond response time. NASCAR drivers are at 225. So that's cool. That's why Bruce Lee could do his nunchucks and ping pong balls, because he actually was also using electricity on his brain, on his body, to become faster than humans are supposed to. He changed the electrical environment around him so his body would have superhuman powers. Now, I, by the way, cannot do that. I'm pretty darn good at ping pong, but I'm not at his level. I also spend 20 minutes a week. So I have other things I'm working on, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing we do is fear. And our bodies, if something is scary, will automatically stop all the good stuff we do, and we will focus 10 times more energy than necessary on things that might be scary, including your mother-in-law's criticism, including your boss telling you did a bad job, including stress, because if you ask that girl out, she might reject you, and rejection feels like dying because the species might not reproduce. So all that stuff takes up our focus before we get to think. And then if it's not scary, our body goes, don't starve to death, because most things do. So it worries about energy. So the first word is fear. The second word is food. They're all F words that run your biology, by the way. So it's like basically run away from it if it's scary, and then eat it if it's edible.
Yep.
Right? So this is why you procrastinated, why you didn't take the opportunities you did, and this is why you ate all the pizza followed by all the Ben & Jerry's. Okay, and the third F word is something all life has to do to stay around forever. Fertility. So basically, this is what your operating system does before you get a chance to be conscious of something. Is it scary? Can I eat it? And after that, if none of those are possibilities, is the fourth F word, which is friend. And this is why we work in tribes. This is why we work in teams. This is why people will stop and help a child they don't know, why you'll help the little lady across the street, because we are wired in our bones to be kind to each other and to support each other and to support life around us as well. And that's why I'm all about upgrading humanity, because I know that when we're at full power, we have enough energy to process and even edit our settings for fear, to turn off hunger permanently, and to make sure that there's love in a healthy way in our life instead of porn or unhealthy behaviors. And that leaves a ton of energy left over for a friend. And there's actually a fifth word I just added to the biohacking world, and it's forgiveness, which is what, at the very end, after you supported your community, we're wired to go through and remove things that are bad programming. And forgiveness is how you do it. So your body will think something is fearful until you let it go. And when you let it go, you are harder and harder to program. It's working directly against the dark forces that are trying to take over society right now.
I'm a little blown out of the water right now, and in such a good way. And I'd like to double click actually on this, because this shows mental health and emotional health at its core. And I'd love to spend a little more time. If you could nuance the fact that fear uses 10 times more energy for stuff.
Sure.
Like edit settings. When you said edit settings for fear. What are we talking about here? Because I'd like to propose that probably plays in on the other side to what you said regarding forgiveness. Play those out.
Oh, it's a virtuous circle for sure.
Yeah.
So the way it works is when your body determines that something is fearful, and it's doing this based on very ancient settings, things that happened either to our species, like famine or even fear of snakes and heights. Enough humans have died from those things over the course of the last hundreds of thousands of years that we're automatically afraid of those. But we're also afraid of holding our breath with our lungs empty. Like if you were to try that right now, just like take a deep breath, breathe it all the way out, and then hold your lungs empty and see how long you can go.
Right.
You'll feel a panic sense unless you've done breath work and training. You get panicked right away. And that's because your body knows you could die. You really have 3 minutes before you're going to get any brain damage, but it doesn't feel like that. And the same thing, if you have the wrong breakfast, by the time 11:30 runs around, you're like, I'm going to starve if I don't have tacos. It's going to take you 60 days to starve, but your body's telling you that you're going to die, and it feels like that. But even worse, what if someone almost dropped you when you were 1 year old? Your little mitochondrial network is now afraid of falling. If you were criticized in 3rd grade or bullied in 7th grade, those things come up. And at 40 years of Zen, this is my high-end neuroscience brain training thing. I've had 1,500 high-end entrepreneurs come through. People who've done really big things in the world, athletes, celebrities, and many of them, especially the men who are successful entrepreneurs, they were bullied. And a lot of their success is because they're just trying to prove they're good enough. One of my friends, Craig, runs a 1,200 person company, and he said on Facebook afterwards, he said, all of my success is because I was bullied in 7th grade, and I don't have to do that anymore. So what he did is he did the forgiveness thing, and he forgave the bullies. What forgiveness does is it means it resets your nervous system so you're no longer responsive to the behavior pattern. And when you do that, this is deep, authentic forgiveness measured by neuroscience. You can actually measure it in your heart, and I measure it in your brainwaves and teach you how to do it more deeply. It feels like doing something like EMDR, like a really deep trauma release. Oh yeah, but it goes deeper. And then what you end up with is you can look at a situation entirely without being triggered. I'll give you an example of that that's pretty extreme. So a while ago, I was on the Joe Rogan show. In fact, I've been on the Joe Rogan show 3 times. And the first time, Joe's like, oh my God, Dave, you changed my life. All this grass-fed nutrition, coffee's good for you, MCT oil, keto, I'm all in. And I didn't actually know who he was when I went on the show because I make podcasts. I don't listen to him. Obviously now everyone knows who he is, but he wasn't as big back then. Yeah. But by the 3rd time I was on there, one of the companies he runs was trying to steal my ideas. Even one of the guys was trying to steal the name Bulletproof. It was dirty. So Joe basically says, Dave, you're a liar. And he spent 18 months publicly criticizing me to cancel me the way, the woke people will cancel you right now. And he's doing that by accusing me of things that don't exist and aren't real. And I was losing my mind, to be perfectly honest. Like, this was a trigger for me. And so what I did is I sat down and I did the 40 years of Zen reset process, which is based on forgiveness. And I went in, and it wasn't actually Joe that was my problem. It was that in 1st grade, another kid who was doing something wrong, I told the teacher. And then the teacher says, hey, little Johnny. And little Johnny goes, no, I didn't do it. Dave did it. So I got in trouble, even though I did the right thing. So I was helping people on Joe's show, but I got in trouble for it. And it was unjust. So for me, when there's injustice, it was a major trigger. The reality is, in the world, quite often there is injustice. But the real reality is that every time Joe Rogan said, Dave Asprey, you're a bad man, I sold more coffee. That was the truth.
Really?
But to me, it felt like I was dying every time I was criticized for something I didn't do.
Yeah.
So when I ran through that reset process and I let that go, reality suddenly was apparent.
Gosh,
and the
Dave.
real reality was, hey, thanks, Joe. Say I'm a bad man one more time because that's worth another $10,000 in sales. That was real. But the fact that I was completely off my rocker and I was ungrounded by all these bullies coming to my website saying I was, a bad person and a con artist and all that, even though up until that moment, all of my comments on social were like, Dave, I lost 100 pounds. This changed my life. I got my brain back. I got my life back. It saved my life. So this is why I say we have 10 times more attention on the fear word, because that hit my trigger. There's not a trigger I chose. It's not a trigger I installed. It was installed by a teacher who made a mistake in first grade. And I forgot all about that until I was sitting there in this meditation with electrodes on my head. And I was going, all right, why is this thing that I've forgotten about suddenly showing up in my consciousness? Let me do a reset on that. And the second I did that, I'm like, thank you, Joe. This is what we can do when something triggers us. And I've had clients like literally call me in tears going, I just had dinner at my mother's house. I'm 50 years old. And this is the first time I've ever been there without being triggered. Dude, in fact, the guy who did that had tens of millions of dollars to his name, right? You can do anything you want when you have a ton of money, but you're still stuck in these old stupid loops. It's not you. It's that you have an operating system in your body that does stuff that you take credit for. So biohacking, when you get past the cellular stuff to make your cells have enough energy, have enough power, it's about reprogramming what you react to. It's about removing inappropriate fear. And when there is something that's appropriate fear, instead of being reactive, to remain conscious and to be strategic instead of reactive. And when you do that, you own the room.
I love that you took us down that road and sharing that memory, because I think about how early unhealed memories that happen, especially from like ages 0 to 7,
that's where it all happens.
Yeah, like recorded in the subconscious, and then here we are 35 years later, and it's just a tape playback, and that colors the narrative. And you had such a profound experience in that. So how can we leverage both biohacking and then the interior work through forgiveness to leverage the opportunity to move forward and reshape and recolor our default narrative so that we can move forward and change our reality?
Well, the first thing you do is you get your cells so they can make enough energy. Because trying to do personal development work when you're running at 50% of your available power, it's not going to work.
Right.
It's such a big deal. So if you're staying up all night, even though I like to do that, if you're staying up all night, you're sleeping poorly or not sleeping enough, you're waking up and having cereal or fruit, or even worse, a green smoothie for breakfast, and you're hungry 2 hours after you eat, or you're eating junk food, or you're drinking one healthy glass of wine every night. No, it's not healthy. If you're doing things like that, or eating a lot of fried restaurant food, all these omega-6 oils, you're not going to run at full power. It doesn't matter whether you want that to be true. It is true, and it's provably true. So when you take some steps, you don't have to be perfect, just to make your body better at making energy. You can take that energy and use it for personal evolution. So start inside the body. And once you get it, like, well, okay, I woke up and I had a little extra energy. I'm done with my day and I'm not exhausted. And now I have some fuel left. And then you take that and you do the inner work. And you can do the inner work the old way. And what biohacking does is like, just do what works and measure it. And if it's not working, do something else. So for me, exercising a lot, being on a first a semi-vegetarian, low-fat, low-calorie. I even went full vegan, which is incredibly destructive for your health.
Yep.
Well, I measured what worked, and I stopped doing what didn't work. So it's okay to change and evolve. But what you're going to do is the same thing on your personal development. So maybe you'll read Smarter Not Harder, which is my last book. And guys, it doesn't change my life even a little bit if you do or don't buy the book. I'm not trying to sell you the book. I'm trying to get you the information. I might make $1.10 or something, in which I just don't care. So this is just where the knowledge is. And there's also, there's also probably on my website. And if you're a fan of Vishen Lakhiani's work at Mind Valley, Vishen has, in both of his books, he talks about the reset mode that he uses as well. So the 40 Years of Zen actually was instrumental in the creation of both of his books. And he's a good friend. In fact, we're doing a mastermind together, a very high level one called Apollo Group. So I'm a fan of you being able to do that kind of reset process, but don't do it when you're exhausted, right? Focus on taking care of the meat. And then when it's time to do it, you can meditate. You could try talk therapy. You could try CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. It's a terrible idea because now you have to become aware of your emotions, catch them, which takes energy, think about them, which takes energy, decide what to do, which takes energy. And then hopefully, even though you're stressed and anxious, say the right thing, even though everyone in the room can feel that you're stressed and anxious. But it does work. Or you could do something like the reset process that I teach, and you could turn off the signal so that you're just no longer triggered, so you don't have to catch the feeling because it stops happening inappropriately. And then you don't have to think about what to do because you just chose what to do. So the idea is I want you to have a clean signal of reality. And every time you let something go, you get a cleaner signal.
Wow. Okay, just to recap, because what I heard you say regarding getting a clean signal, healing cells, to stop running at 50% power, when do we start to biohack? What I heard you say, and please fill in the gaps for me, this involves how we sleep, how we start the day, how we fuel, and then you talked about smarter, not harder. Are those the tenets of healing cells first? Yeah.
Those are some major ones. Yeah.
Okay.
Learning how to get good sleep, not more, just good sleep.
Yeah.
In fact,
nuance those for us, if you would. Yeah, nuance those for us.
The biggest studies, the longest studies with the most people on sleep show the people who live the longest, they sleep for 6.5 hours a night.
Really?
Not 8 hours. And the people who sleep 9 hours die way more often than people who sleep 7 hours.
Whoa.
You know why?
Why?
Healthy people need less sleep. People with less toxins need less sleep. When people go on the Bulletproof diet, it's routinely reported, like, I woke up fully charged in an hour less sleep. I'm like, yeah, I know, right? So how you fuel and how you prepare for sleep and what you do when you're asleep, it's a major thing. Now, the summary of all this is actually the most successful URL selection of my entire career. There's a website called sleepwithdave.com. And it has everything that I know about how to get better sleep in less time. It's free.
I'll put that in the show notes.
Yep, sleepwithdave.com. And that's just a gift because so many people ask me this, and it's more than just one thing. But I can tell you, having dimmers in your house so that at night your lights are dim, a really big deal. Dimming your TV, using special glasses if you don't have control of your lighting environment, like when you're in a hotel. One of my companies is called True Dark, and we make glasses that actually put your brain in the same state as meditation. If you wear them for 15 minutes, you wear them before bed, and it sends a signal to the mitochondria inside your eyes that are telling the rest of your body what time of day it is. And when you look through a specific type of lens, it's not just blue blockers. What you get is this strange sleepiness that just comes on, and then you get better sleep.
Is that theta or gamma?
No, gamma would wake you up.
Okay.
It is actually alpha and some theta.
Okay.
And the glasses are called True Dark. It's at truedark.com. Again, I'm not trying to sell you stuff, guys. Like,
no, this is so fascinating.
Glasses. So that would help. Or get red light bulbs at night. My house is entirely dim because I have dimmer switches on everything.
Yeah.
I have incandescent bulbs, which you can't buy anymore, but I bought 2,000 of them before they banned them because they're better than LEDs for your sleep. And I have red LEDs. So at night, it looks like I'm in a submarine or maybe a house of ill repute. I don't care. I sleep like a baby.
Do you really, Dave?
Do what?
I said you sleep like a baby. That's incredible.
Oh yeah, it takes me 3 minutes to fall asleep. I have been tracking my sleep for 15 years. I used to have a headband that I would wear before you could get it in a ring or a watch. And I get on average 90 minutes of deep sleep, 90 minutes of REM sleep in 6.5 hours, which is more than most college students get. And normally you lose those types of sleep as you're aging. So it works. You can reverse aging. You can get way better sleep than you expect. So one thing is darkness. Another thing is temperature. Another thing, your bedroom should be so dark you can't see anything, which means you need better curtains. A study in Japan showed that the amount of light that leaks around normal curtains in a typical city increases depression by 69%. This was 800 men. They didn't study women, but it's probably worse for women. And That means it better be a cave. So my bedroom, wooden shutters, everything's blacked out. Any LEDs that are still plugged in are taped over with electrical tape. There is no light at all. And oh my God, the difference, right? And there's other things, lower the thermostat. And there's supplements you can take before you go to bed. It's remarkable what you can do.
Yeah. So if we want to sleep better tonight and begin the process of incorporating better sleep hygiene immediately, what are some what are some things that we can do tonight? Like, I'd even love to know your thoughts on melatonin, but I don't want to drive your thoughts.
We can talk about melatonin. Well, tonight, lower your thermostat.
Okay. To what?
68 Fahrenheit is better. You also, it's possible, and I have links in there. You can get what I do, which is I have a mattress cover that lowers the temperature of my bed. I have a mattress that's always 67 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's so nice to sleep that way. And you get better sleep, but you're not going to do that in one night. You might also, I'm thinking about it, to do tonight. One of the biggest variables is when you have dinner. The earlier you have dinner, the better you sleep. You need at least 3 hours between your last bite and when you go to bed. So I like to have dinner at 5 or 6. If you have dinner at 8 o'clock, you will not sleep nearly as well. It's actually really irritating. I really would like to have dinner at 9 o'clock because it's fun, but it just doesn't work like that. Melatonin, when your body secretes it in darkness, it makes you insulin resistant. So you get fatter when you eat after the sun goes down.
Whoa.
So melatonin as a supplement, I've been using it for many, many years. And if you are going to use it, do not use it in kids because it actually slows their entry into puberty. And so it can mess with their sexual maturation. In adults, maybe 0.3 milligrams seems to be, that's what your body makes. But your mitochondria make melatonin in every cell in the body. It's not just in the brain. And there are people who will use mega doses, like 10 or 20 or even 50 milligrams in order to stave off cancer. They'll use it for long COVID. Wait, am I allowed to say that? For long C something, something, something. So we don't get censored by the powers that be.
Yeah,
I, for one, support our new AI overlords. There, I said it. So... but yeah, the people who have, for some weird reason, these symptoms, the problem with very large doses of melatonin is that it can cause very serious arrhythmias, which is when your heart rate gets unstable. And I've actually experienced this in my experiments. I actually went to the hospital one time before I figured out what was doing it. For me, it takes about 40 milligrams of melatonin, and then I'll start skipping heartbeats. So this is a reported problem that no one talks about. So melatonin, maybe for jet lag. Maybe when you're traveling. I don't use it now, but I have used it for many years at various doses and know it well. And I think for skipping time zones, but right now, if I use the True Dark glasses, a baseball hat, and meal timing, I don't get jet lag anywhere on the planet.
That's amazing. Okay, we're talking about biohacking, some of these tenets. Earlier in the conversation, you were talking about healthy food like kale, spinach, and almonds, how they strip the body of nutrients. So let's connect that thought, like unpack that, connect that to how you said we need to start the day correctly. What's the proper breakfast, and pop the bubble on dark leafy greens even, because I think about phytic acid and all those things, but I'd love to hear your nuanced thoughts.
Well, how you start your day, wake up, don't pick up your phone right away. That would be a really poor habit to do.
Why not? Why not? Real fast.
When you pick up your phone right away, someone else's agenda takes over your day. And your immune system will likely raise cortisol more than you want it to. And you actually you're not in control of your day. Someone else is. What I made a habit of doing, and what I do when I'm at home with my kids in Canada, is I don't take my phone off airplane mode until I drop the kids off at school. I'm living in 2 locations. So I'm in Austin much of the time for work stuff. And so when I'm here, same thing. I just don't take my phone off airplane mode until I've had a chance to meditate. What I do lately, you can follow me on Instagram and join me, it's Dave.Asprey, but I do a cold plunge. And so I do an Instagram live while I'm sitting in 43-degree water. And I answer questions for 8 or 10 minutes until I'm shivering. And then I'm like, all right, I've had enough. And then I get out. And you don't have to do a cold plunge, but you should do a cold shower for at least 3 minutes. When you do that, the brief exposure to discomfort resets your dopamine for the rest of the day so that things that would have sucked don't suck, and things that wouldn't have brought you joy bring you joy. There's also health benefits, but it's mostly neurological. That's why you do that. And if you're lucky enough to live in a town that has an Upgrade Labs opening, this is a company I started 8 years ago, the world's first biohacking center. And we've got 15 locations opening in the US. It's a franchise. You can go to ownandupgradelabs.com and open your own biohacking center. We've got things that are better than a cold plunge. So there you can walk into super chilled air for 3 minutes and you get this profound benefit of endorphins. And then you can use all the other biohacking tech so that you don't have to work out very much and you get all the results. So the idea here is cold exposure or just doing something unpleasant for 1 or 2 minutes makes everything better later in the day. Let's see. So you might do that. The other morning thing that will change your life is you take a glass of filtered water. Don't drink tap water unless you just don't like yourself. Then add sea salt or electrolyte powder and drink that first thing, maybe with some lemon juice, especially if you've been a vegan or you eat a lot of healthy plant-based foods like those almonds and spinach and kale and sweet potatoes and all that, or even regular potatoes. When you do that, calcium builds up in your cells because of a plant toxin, and lemon juice over time can help to dissolve that. So there's a reason to have lemon and a reason to have salt in the morning. So you could do that. Some people, if you wake up and you're bouncing with energy, you're a morning person, wait an hour for your coffee. If you wake up and you're like, why do I have to wake up this early? Have your coffee then. The reason is that coffee will beneficially raise your morning cortisol when it should go up. And then it becomes alkaline over time, which enhances your endurance. So people say, oh, coffee might be acid. Well, dude, lemon juice is acid too, but you think that's healthy. It's because fruit acids raise strength now, and as they metabolize into alkaline, they raise endurance over time. So coffee and lemon juice share characteristics that way. And your coffee timing is based on whether you're a morning person. If you're a morning person, late coffee. If you're a night person, early coffee. It kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
Wow. I mean, your life is such a case study of this at work.
So I'm a nerd, is what you're saying?
No. I am. Well, I am too, and so that's cool. Like I love to nerd out on this stuff. I love getting a full panel of blood work done every year and looking at things like obviously vitamin D, ferritin, my A1C, et cetera, et cetera. But here's why I mention your life is because you were killing it in your career, but then I heard you say you were plagued with crippling brain fog. So these things that we're talking about today, were these the rudimentary things that began to turn the key? Take us back in time to that.
All right. So I'm 26 years old.
Yep.
I'm working in Silicon Valley. I was a co-founder of part of the company that held Google's first servers when Google was 2 guys and 2 computers. I co-founded the professional services group of a company called Exodus Communications. We grew to $36 billion in valuation. And I'm 26 years old. I make $6 million. I'm driving a BMW and I'm having crippling brain fog. I'm like, I wouldn't hire myself. I bought disability insurance. By the way, I lost the $6 million when I was 28. It happens. But what I learned during that time was if you don't have enough energy, saving time doesn't matter. Saving money doesn't matter. Energy is the currency of entrepreneurs. Energy is the currency of life. It's not dollars and it's not time. Because if you are tired and you have money, you'll spend all of your money getting your energy back. If you have money, you can buy time. But the one thing that's most precious is energy. With energy, you can make money. With energy, you can buy time. But without energy, all of your money and all of your time will go into getting your energy back. And I was at that point where nothing else mattered more than just getting my energy back and making my brain work. So I started backwards. And I write about this in, I think this is my anti-aging book called Superhuman. I started out saying, I'm going to fix my brain because that's how I make my money. So I started taking nootropics before anyone knew what the word was. This was in the late 90s. I had to order them from Europe because you couldn't buy them in the US. And I bought them and I took them and I said, this sucks. They don't even work. And then I stopped taking them. And the day I stopped taking them, I said, wait a minute. I'm searching for words. And it turns out when I took the smart drugs, I felt more like myself. It was so natural, it was invisible. But when I stopped taking them, I really noticed, like, oh my God, like I'm lacking something. And today, this is 20, 25 years later, I don't forget words. If it does happen, I can tell you exactly what I did that caused my brain fog. Wow. It's not normal. Even one time a day, go, oh, what was I going to say? No, if that happens, it's because you didn't sleep well. It's because you ate a toxin. It's because of something you did. And you're in control. That's what biohacking gives you. It's magical to do that. But I wasn't in control back then. So I started taking the smart drugs. And that gave me enough energy to study biochemistry, to study mitochondria, to study neuroplasticity. Now, keep in mind, we only awarded the Nobel Prize for neuroplasticity to Eric Kandel in 1994. He's been on my podcast. And the podcast is called The Human Upgrade, by the way.
Yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes.
Eric is one of the most invigorated 90-something-year-olds I've ever interviewed. This guy just on fire and having so much fun. He proved that the brain changes over time. Before that, doctors believed that if something was wrong, it was just wrong forever. And he blew that out of the water, which is such a valuable thing. So we didn't know much about it back then, but I started studying it. I bought my own EEG machine, which is why I today run a neuroscience company. And I started taking these things. I started experimenting with diets. I started quantifying. And I did it because my doctor told me that vitamin C would kill me.
Wow.
And I asked him, what about Linus Pauling? And he goes, Linus who? And Linus Pauling won 2 Nobel Prizes and was famous for taking many grams of vitamin C a day. And I told the doctor, vitamin C seems to make me feel better. And there was a reason that it did that, even though excessive vitamin C probably isn't good for you, it turns out. But it's not going to kill you, certainly not right away. And if it makes you feel better, there's a reason for that. So all these things happened to me, and I started studying. And every night I would finish this really demanding job in Silicon Valley. And then I'd come home and I'd read at my desk for 4 hours until I fell asleep, usually at my desk, which is not good for you. And I was learning biochemistry, and I was learning about neurology. I was learning about nootropics. And eventually I started writing a blog. I started Bulletproof. It was going to be a nonprofit. I was already running an anti-aging nonprofit I had for almost a decade. I learned from all of these people. And I said, I just want to share this knowledge. I don't want anyone to ever go through what I went through. It was that bad. So 5 people are going to read my blog. It was called the Bulletproof Executive. And if those 5 people avoid what I did, if they don't have to spend millions of dollars and they just don't suffer and have all that pain, I will have done a solid. And when my nonprofit board of directors argued about the name of the blog, I'm like, I'll just do it. And it was like a side project. And then I published the recipe for Bulletproof coffee. And then I'm like, I bet you I could make these beans. And it was totally, I didn't build a list. I didn't do any of the stuff you do for internet marketing because it wasn't going to be a company. I had stock options. I had 2 young kids. I made $250,000 a year. I worked for Trend Micro, a big antivirus company. And I ended up quitting all that to make coffee that didn't give you brain fog. And I continue that tradition now with Danger Coffee, the newest company that I've started. And I shared, there's 3,000 articles about health. There's 8 books. There's almost 1,100 hours of podcasts and countless interviews on shows like yours because I care. I just literally every single person who stops doing something that makes them weak or decides they're going to change one thing they do in the morning and they got better energy. And then that night they didn't yell at their kids or they didn't drive off the road into a bridge. Who the heck knows? But every time you turn up your energy, you make the world around you a better place. So I want my kids to grow up in a world full of people like that. And I want you and I want every single person listening to have more energy than they do now because I want to live in a world full of people like that. And so do you.
That's really fascinating. I mean, your books are fabulous. In fact, I'll ask this before we kind of get back into the meat of the conversation here. This might be a little obscure, but I'll go for it. Like, what's the book you haven't written yet that you know you need to write eventually because of all this accumulated stuff?
The next book, I haven't written it yet, but I'm working on it, is going to be more on the emotional and spiritual stuff. The things I've learned through 1,500 people, high performers, some of the highest performers in the world, looking at their brainwaves, spending 5 days with them, understanding why we do what we do, and focusing very specifically on why we tell ourselves a false story about reality and then pretend it's true. That is the definition of narcissism. So it will be about narcissism and sociopathy. And I have been through the best training ground you could ever have for that. I have worked at a venture capital firm.
Oh. Wow.
I have worked in the world of startups for 25 years. I've raised more than $90 million. I've been on both sides of the table. And if you want to study narcissism, you look at bankers, you look at industrialists, you look at monopolists like Rockefeller, and you look at what venture capital firms do to founders. And when you talk to experienced founders who've raised a lot of money, the vast, vast majority of them will tell you there's an operating system. And the operating system for governments and for investment firms is very similar. It goes like this. We're going to take a carrot peeler and we're going to ask for some of your rights. We're just going to take a little bit for your own safety, for the good of the company, so we can raise another round of funding. And they're just gently taking away until you object. And when you object, then they stop. If it's a government, they might stop for a year or two. If it's an investment firm, they might stop for 3 months, and then they start at it again. And they're slowly, eventually like, wait, I was peeling my carrot, and all that's left is a little matchstick of a carrot. That's how investors make money when they're professional investors. And that's how governments over time, every government, I don't care if it's a democracy or a republic like the US, or if it's any government form, they always want more power, and they always take a little bit until people rebel, and then they stop, but they never give it back. The Patriot Act, it's just for a little while. Yeah, right. It's even worse now, 25 years later. They don't stop. They never do. Investors are the same way. So It turns out in relationships, if you're dating a narcissist, they will make you feel like you're crazy because they believe their fake story, and they'll convince you that you're crazy for believing reality. Mm-hmm. And some people do it on purpose. Those are sociopaths. Some people do it and they don't know they're doing it. Those are narcissists. Startups, including some of mine, have been absolutely shredded by people who don't even know what they're doing because they're so traumatized. So when we heal our own trauma, we become better able to spot narcissists and sociopathy. Maybe it's in your family. I've dealt with that. Maybe it's a coworker. Maybe it's a boss. Maybe it's someone that you're in a relationship with. When you know reality because you are at full power, because you've dealt with your own trauma, you can make decisions. There's a quote we've all heard. You ever heard the quote, blood is thicker than water?
Oh, yeah.
Do you know the real quote? That's a shortening of the real quote.
No, tell me.
The real quote says, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. What that means is that the blood of your chosen soul family, the people you choose to have a relationship with, is thicker than your family connections. So there's a lot of codependence that gets taught by people who mean well. And what this means, though, is very seriously, if you choose to have someone in your life consciously and without any weird filters, then that connection is actually thicker than a family bond. How many times have you had family members who betray each other? They fight over wills. They steal from each other. They feel entitled. They take childhood squabbles. All that stuff happens to people. But when you become a full power human, you start seeing that stuff and you realize you don't have to have it in your life. So I believe it's everyone's right to choose the people that they want in their inner circle. And it doesn't have to be your relatives. And if you're lucky, it is.
Jeez. That's so good. Dave, we're at time today and I want to respect your time, of course. So I'd love to land here and I'll let you take this or land this plane however you think this would be most beneficial to us. So I'm thinking about a distillation of what we've talked about today that listeners, viewers could go, okay, I'm going to make choices today to begin this journey of transformation, or maybe just a few things we haven't covered, like, hey, everyday toxins that we might not regard as toxins. What do you think would be a great place to land this conversation?
Well, earlier we talked about almonds and sweet potatoes and spinach. And I've been a fan of sweet potatoes, actually. They're probably better than regular potatoes, but they still have this major problem. Huge numbers of people are dealing with skin conditions, joint conditions, all kinds of inflammation, unexplained things throughout the body. It's caused by a compound called oxalic acid. And I've been talking about this, for 10 plus years. And when you eat this, it'll pull calcium out of your bones, but then it takes that calcium and forms razor sharp crystals that cause inflammation in your brain, in your lining of your gut, in your joints, and very specifically kidney stones. If you were to go back 20 years, the most common cause of kidney stones was drinking a lot of alcohol and eating a lot of meat and organ meats, something called purines. Well, what it has far surpassed that now is called calcium oxalate kidney stones. The people who are eating a spinach and kale salad every day, the people who are eating sweet potatoes every day, the people who are eating 2 handfuls of almonds and almond flour every day, even whole grains, most nuts, most seeds, these so-called healthy plant-based foods, all of them raise the levels of oxalic acid to the point that you don't know why you have all of these different weird symptoms. It's a major cause. It's not the only cause, because phytic acid is also in these things, which steals minerals from you. So I'll just tell you, some plants that you think are healthy that even have been promoted, like soy, is very high in oxalic acid and phytic acid. So the safest food you can eat is grass-fed red meat.
Great.
The safest fat you can eat is grass-fed ghee, clarified butter, or maybe tallow. And if you were to eat those foods with salt from the ocean, you're going to be way better off than someone who eats a green smoothie every day. In fact, I think green smoothies every day, the way they're made today, are dangerous. You can do a safe one. Use arugula or lettuce, actual lettuce, instead of spinach and kale and all those other weird things, and chard and things like that that are actually bad for you. So we don't know this, but we did know this 100 years ago. This is all over the literature from hospitals about people getting kidney stones from this. And then it's like, now they're just selling us this stuff. It doesn't even taste that good. Kale is a garbage collector plant. It collects thallium, it collects forever chemicals. So if you're spending a huge amount of money on eating fresh vegetables that are punching you in the kidneys and making your joints hurt when you wake up in the morning, spend it on grass-fed meat. You'll feel better.
What a place to land. Dave, I mean, you gave us a full tour today, and I'm so thankful. Like, thanks for taking the time to invest in me and the folks here. Seriously.
You got it, Chris. It's my pleasure, and thanks for sharing this idea that you can be in charge of your own biology. And when you do that, you're in charge of your healing, you're in charge of your trauma, and you're in charge of how you treat other people and how you treat yourself. It's not, if you're having a hard time, it's not because you're a bad person. It's because you're not making enough energy or because your programming is wrong. You can change both of those.
It's so good. Folks, head to the show notes, wintoday.tv. Links to everything Dave Asprey will be there, including his books. But Dave, thanks again for being here today. Wow.
You got it, Chris.